Back at the second hour of our program, Phil Ittner is on the line with us, the veteran American war correspondent who is now stationed in Kyiv, Ukraine, reporting live from there. He also has a YouTube video blog you can check out. His name is spelled Philip Ittner, Philippittner. That's also his Twitter handle, just like I said it, just like I spelled it, at Philip Ittner. Phil, welcome back to the program. I understand you guys had another Russian terrorist attack this morning.
Yeah, rude awakening this morning.
Tell us about it.
Not to be flippant about it. We were under massive attack today, Tom. I woke up personally this morning here in Kiev to the sound of air raid sirens and two large explosions, impacts. The air defense system around the capital worked very well, but even still, some things did get through. It wasn't just in Kiev where there were attacks. There were attacks down in Odessa and Chernihiv. Sumy, I believe, came under attack. This was a nationwide attack by a mixture of first a wave of drones overnight, apparently, and then cruise missiles in the early morning hours. All of this coming within about a 24-hour period of the announcement that German Leopard tanks would be coming. Now, some say that there's correlation there. Maybe there's a connection because we do know that Russia likes to strike back, to kind of commit a terror campaign, in essence, in response whenever there's kind of a bit of good news for Ukraine. So nobody's saying they know for a fact that it was connected, but it's in a lot of people's minds.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, hard to say, but what impact do you think these tanks, what I'm hearing is that, and I'd love to reality check this with you, is that America, that we're offering these Abrams tanks, a battalion's worth, largely as a perfunctory gesture, that they won't get there for a couple of months. It's not going to have a huge military impact. But what it did was it basically allowed the European countries that have these German Leopard tanks, and there's literally hundreds of them in Poland, and Greece has like 300. I mean, they're all over Europe, right? Mm-hmm. It allowed those countries then to get an export license from the Germans to export those Leopards into Ukraine, and for Germany also to provide some that they probably wouldn't have done had we not said, yes, we're going to do this. Is that what's going on?
Tom, it's a safe bet. The Abrams is a very complex system because it's built around a jet turbine engine. It's completely different than all the other main battle tanks within NATO, and its performance, shows that. I mean, the Abrams I have been at war and watched Abrams in actual operations, and they are an incredibly powerful piece of kit. Mm-hmm. But that does not diminish the capabilities of what the other NATO main battle tanks are like. Now, they mostly are on a diesel engine, and you're right. The Leopard 2 is the main battle tank for the Germans, and they have put out such a high level of production that they're spread out around the continent. I mean, surprisingly, Spain has just announced they're going to send 50 of these things. Mm-hmm. What will be before I move on to what will be the effect of these NATO made battle tanks coming, the Abrams is so complex that I think you're right. It's mostly a perfunctory thing. It's going to take a long time before those are on the front lines. I suspect they will be sent here and sit at a staging area somewhere in the west, out near Lviv. It's going to take a long time to train for them. It's going to take a long time to build the infrastructure.
And they require jet fuel.
Refitted, rearmed, repaired. Yeah, and they run on jet fuel, which also makes the engine itself a completely different beast than anything. I mean, would you need to take your car to a jet propulsion shop? No, you would. An F-16 down to the Jiffy Lube. It's based on that kind of equation here. So I suspect those are really going to be there as a symbolic gesture. But what that allows the other nation states to do within NATO, in particular Germany, because of its difficult history, not least of which here, is that everybody can grab hands and step off the sidewalk together as they cross the street. The Leopards are going to be here. The word now is hopefully by the end of March. They will be part of the spring offensive. They will, and what's also important to recognize is that they're not just getting main battle tanks; they're getting infantry fighting vehicles, which will allow the Ukrainians to fight in a very similar fashion to NATO doctrine, which is this doctrine called combined arms, which is just hitting the enemy with so many different kinds of weaponry, whether it's dismounted infantry, whether it's the infantry fighting vehicle with its tow missiles, or it's heavy guns that are on there, not as big as a tank, and then of course to have the tanks there, which is a reassuring aspect and a heck of a weapon to have on the battlefield. It is going to be a big deal. There's no getting around it. This is another one of those phases in the wars, like when we gave them the HIMARS, like at the very beginning when there were supplies of anti-tank weapons that were flooded in here. This is going to be a big deal. And while I don't have a crystal ball, I can do math. And I think this gives the Ukrainians a massive advantage. We'll see what happens. War is a fickle mistress.
Yeah.
But a lot of people who are professional at this are saying this may signal that this war will end in this year.
Yeah, well, that would be a good thing. I mean, it's we got 8 million refugees.
That's the
You've
point.
got tens or hundreds of thousands of people dead and injured. This is just this is a crime against humanity. Yeah,
this has to end.
Yeah. So what are you hearing?
This has to come to an end.
We're talking with Phil Ittner, the veteran war correspondent currently stationed in Kyiv, Ukraine. Phil, what are you hearing that the Russians are up to? I'm hearing that Belarus, that Lukashenko, Putin went and visited him a couple of weeks ago, and apparently the fruit of that is that he's going to he's either going to use Belarus, which is across Ukraine's northern border, Russia's on their eastern border, that he's going to use Belarus as a staging area, or possibly even the Belarusian military is going to get directly involved, number one. Number two, that, I'm hearing stories that, Putin is trying to mobilize another 500,000 soldiers within Russia. What are you guys hearing there? And what do you think is credible? And what do you think is, propaganda out of all these messages that we're hearing?
Well, there's a lot of concern about Belarus, but Lukashenko finds himself in a very difficult situation because he has a really strong potential uprising, a rebellion, basically within Belarus. He almost was dethroned as Europe's last dictator just recently when he faked another election. So
just last year.
There are lots of people in Belarus. There are a lot of people in Belarus who, if he were to put the forces, which you also have to understand, a lot of these forces in Belarus and the structure within the post-Soviet space, including in Russia, that there's a bleeding between some military and paramilitary that are used for suppression purposes to keep the population down. And if he sends those forces to fight here in Ukraine, they will not be back home to defend him in his presidential palace. Mm-hmm. So it might be, though, that they're just, as you mentioned, using it as a staging area. And these new conscripts that Russia keeps bringing up, that they'll be flooded in. Russia's doctrine is not, I mentioned combined arms doctrine that NATO kind of does. Russia's doctrine, although they say they use similar combined arms, they don't. It's basically artillery and then just throw men at the front line. And that's been their doctrine for decades, if not centuries.
Waves of meat.
Just because they have so many.
Yeah.
They have so many, and they are structured in such a way that you can just grab these guys, throw them in uniform, and get them out on the front lines within 4 or 6 weeks. And they're just sitting there with an AK-47, not really well supplied, not well trained, and sadly they're just in the Russian term, actually they don't even call it cannon fodder. In Russian it's called cannon meat. Which just kind of gets your mentality going. That's the mentality. So the Ukrainians are digging in. I was out east recently, and I saw that happening. They are expecting a Russian offensive, probably not even waiting until spring, but it will be just waves of conscripts coming, crashing on their lines. Now, they had to pull back from Soledar, for example, but again, they're digging in and around. this war is going to get really, really violent. Very, very, not that it hasn't been already, but this is kind of, I think, starting to be a make or break year for this war. Yeah. Now, Russia would like to have this go for years and years. So I don't think if Russia regains the initiative like they had at the very start of this war, that they will be in a position to finish this war by the end of the year. But if they can regain the initiative, they could push this out for years until the West, the solidarity within the West is eroded a little bit. But if they crash upon Ukrainian positions and Ukraine is then able to mount a proper offensive with this new weaponry, that in that instance, I could see this war ending by the end of this year with a decisive Ukrainian victory. And as horrible as it's going to be to watch and to see and to all the pain that's going to happen from this war, if Ukraine is to regain its sovereignty and regain its territory, the best option is to really take it to the Russians and try and finish this thing.
Yeah. Phil, we just have 45 seconds to a hard break here. So it sounds like a lot's going to depend on who gets the heavy weaponry and the soldiers in place first. I mean, is there a concern that it's going to take too long to get those Leopards into Ukraine?
Yeah, there is a concern, but I have no doubt that the West, as quickly as they possibly can, and for the Ukrainians who are so obviously deeply invested in this, they're all in. They have to be, because this is about their home. They're going to train as hard as they can. They're dedicated in this endeavor. And so if they can physically get the tanks here, I am confident the Ukrainians can get up to speed with them very quickly. And in conjunction with the Bradleys that they're already training on, and hopefully some Patriot missile systems also coming in for more defense, ultimately, I am cautiously optimistic that Ukraine will win this war and win it this year.
Good news. Phil Ittner, you can follow him, his video blog over on YouTube. Also, Philip Ittner on Twitter. Phil, thanks a lot for dropping by.
Thank you, Tom.
I really appreciate these updates every week. Thank you so much. We will be back.